obviously you guys know that the main purpose behind this channel was to teach you guys about cloud, how to get into cloud if you're interested in that sort of thing. So I figured a good video to make is some of the stuff that I've seen people use. And I apologize, I don't have any graphics or anything cool to show you guys. I can just list the tool names. I'm going to link all the tool names in the description after this video is over, so you can, look at how these tools are spelled. Like, there's nothing super like weird spelled tool names or anything like that. But basically, I just wanted to give you a brief overview of what these tools are. What do they do? I want to break down actually each one of these tools in an in-depth video by itself. Exactly, how it kind of works under the hood, just a little bit, just enough for you to understand it, and how you can like practically use it. Coming up, I want to start getting into like tutorials, and I don't know if I'm going to do those live or if I'm going to do like a pre-recorded video and release them as like pre-records. I'll kind of figure that out later on. So now I want to get into like the more technical aspect of things to kind of, give some value to, people who might be aspiring cloud engineers, or, just in general, people who want to get into the cloud, or people who are already in the cloud. Maybe, I don't know, maybe you just haven't used a tool before and you want to know how it works. So that's my plan there. Before I continue, we have Christian Soto 123 in the chat says good evening. Good evening, Christian. Thank you for your support, sir. But so top 10, not necessarily any particular order, because all these tools do different things. And these are just like some of the ones that came to the top of my head that I've seen in all the places that I've worked. So first tool, which is probably the most common I've seen, is a tool called Terraform. So what Terraform is essentially it's a tool used to provision infrastructure using code, right? So a lot of developers, if you're a developer, obviously, you use code to do stuff with your applications, right? Well, you can do the same thing in the cloud, so you don't have to manually click through and do everything step by step, although you can do it that way. And I have seen places that have done it that way, and unfortunately worked at places that have done it that way. I would not recommend it because, pretty much anybody can create anything, and you don't know what's there and what's not there when you have a very large infrastructure. So what Terraform does is essentially it allows you to code out the infrastructure that you want to be built very specifically. I believe that is called imperative. I think it's like imperative declaration or something like that. I don't remember. There's a super fancy buzzword for it. You have like declarative and imperative. I think Terraform is imperative, which is basically you're telling it exactly what you want and exactly how you want it configured, right off the get-go. So basically, you write down or you code out like what they call resources in Terraform, which is like if you want to provision a VM, you're going to have a Christian Soto says, FYI, Instagram. Well, let me share your story. It's somewhere in the settings. Noted. I will fix that later. Good to know. Thanks for the information. So anyway, you have these code blocks that essentially say you want to provision a virtual machine, right? Basically, you say, hey, like Terraform, like I want to provision a virtual machine. I want to call it this. I want it to be this instance type. I want it to be Windows or Linux or whatever the case may be. And it goes and it builds that for you in the cloud. So it builds that for you in AWS, GCP, Azure, Cloudflare, I think has a module for Terraform. But essentially that's what Terraform's for, just to provision resources in the cloud. And you can also do like networking and stuff like that directly in code. So it's all there for everybody to see. That's the important part when it comes to Terraform, which when I do a Terraform specific video, I will tell you all about that a little bit more in depth. But just for right now, if you want to research it, it's called Terraform. Look at what it does. Super cool. And it basically can build your cloud for you by running like 2 commands, and it's pretty awesome. used to, automate deployments, automate building resources, and initial configuration of those resources. All right. Next tool, really quick, is Ansible. So Ansible is a configuration management tool, which, granted, super buzzword type deal, but configuration management essentially means how you want to set that particular virtual machine up. Like, what programs you want installed on it, like what tools you want installed on it. Um, if you want to do something like modify those VMs in some way, and say you have like a huge inventory of virtual machines that you have to do one task to every single one of them, like 200 VMs, right? Well, Ansible is a really good tool for that because you can just give it a list essentially of virtual machines or resources that you want modified, and it can just perform all those updates or all those installations or all those backups or whatever the case may be. With literally a click of the button, or you can schedule it so it does it automatically, like every night at like midnight, for example. Like it'll like patch Windows VMs, or it'll do some type of backup or something and save it to a database or some kind of like memory store or something like that, right? So that's what's really cool about Ansible. You can also use it to automate like provisioning resources too, which is a little bit more technical, a little bit more in depth. So you can use Ansible and Terraform together to spin up different resources automatically, for, CI/CD, which is a buzzword for two more buzzwords, which is continuous integration and continuous delivery, which I'm going to do a specific video on that later on. I have so many videos, guys, so many videos that I want to make, because all of this stuff like all just ties into itself. You know what I mean? So I need to break down these things faster. I need to pump out more videos, basically, is what I'm telling myself. So keep that in mind. CI/CD, you can Google it. It'll tell you what it is. You're probably not going to understand it if you're new to programming, and that's fine. Or if you're not into IT at all, totally cool. But I'll go into that later. That might actually be my next video because that's a pretty good video. So that's Ansible, general overview. So we're going to move on to the next tool, which is called Packer. Now, I have typically only used Packer for one thing, and that's to build machine images. And basically what a machine image is basically like I guess like a setup of how you want a VM to be created, right? So if you want like specific things installed onto that VM immediately upon that VM being created, you make what's called an image. Typically people call it the golden image, and every instance or every virtual machine that you make is going to be based off of this underlying image, which is what Packer's used for typically. That's how I use it. I know there's a couple other things you can do with it, but I'm not 100% sure what that is, because honestly, most commonly I see it use it for building golden images for virtual machines. So it's another one to check out if you're interested in any of these tools. Another one, my personal favorite of them all, is Docker. And what Docker is it's essentially a containerization service. Again, another buzzword, containerization. What does that mean? Well, essentially all it means is you're running a service inside of a container that basically has the same environment regardless of what machine it runs on, right? So it's again, it spins up like its own virtual machine, wherever it is, and it sets it up the exact same way every single time. That way, no matter where you run that container, it's always going to work. It's always going to be the same because it runs in the same virtual environment in its own little package, basically. And then you can move that little package container anywhere you want, and it's going to run the same regardless, right? So that's what I really like about Docker, which leads me into my next tool, which is Kubernetes. And basically, super, super high level of what Kubernetes is, and I will put that in the description because it's a little weird to spell. Essentially what that is it's a tool that takes all of those Docker containers, made by Docker, and it can basically orchestrate them. And what do I mean by orchestrate? I mean, it can essentially run them in a very closed environment that is, all of these containers are accessible to each other. And also it has like automatic scaling, and like automatic failover. So if like one, node or one pod goes down, it has like two other ones that it can be running. And it makes it really easy to make additional ones. So your services basically don't go down. It's an easy way to make your application like highly available, or your services highly available. So that's like a general overview of Kubernetes. That's going to be a long video if I ever do one, because there's so much involved with Kubernetes, but it's a really cool tool. I love working with it. I do want to make a video about that. Next, we have Jenkins. So Jenkins, again, is a CI/CD tool. And high-level overview of Jenkins, I really don't see Jenkins too much anymore, but it was very popular, and I'm sure it still is. I just don't see it where I'm at right now. Basically, it's used for like automating like changes in deployment. So if you want to do like an automated testing suite that you push your code to GitHub, Jenkins runs a test suite basically, and then will either automatically deploy it to production, or maybe a staging environment to where that gets moved to production. Which basically it's meant to make changes in your code without like taking down a complete instance and like having your app be completely offline. And then, it won't keep your app offline. It'll keep your app running, apply the update to a different environment, and then move that environment over to production. That's what's called a blue to green deployment. You can also do like rolling deployments if you want like multiple deployment environments, for whatever reason, for testing purposes, etc. So that's pretty much what Jenkins is. Again, you can do a lot of stuff with Jenkins. It just depends on how you're going to use it. I will do a dedicated video on Jenkins as well. All these tools are getting their own dedicated video, so I can finally stop saying that. But so we'll move on to Jira. And Jira, that's a pretty simple tool, but every place I've worked at has used Jira. And essentially all it is to organize tasks and to assign tasks out to people, and to basically organize your project a little bit better, right? So that way you have like an overarching idea of what your project needs to be, like the end result, and then you can break those issues down into like manageable tickets, right? So essentially, if you have to build out like an entire feature, you can break that into like 10 different parts that you can distribute among your team, and it just keeps things organized. It keeps everybody on the same page as to what's happening throughout your project. And it's a really good tool to use. You're going to use it a lot if you're in the IT space. Like Jira and Atlassian, who owns Jira, basically owns like all of the tools for that kind of stuff. They kind of have a monopoly on that stuff, which is, they're good tools. What can I say? Next tool is GitHub, and some of you might be familiar with GitHub, but obviously it's used in the cloud too. Where do we store our infrastructure as code? Typically it's stored in GitHub or GitLab or some type of Git repository, right? It's used for storing code, and I know GitHub specifically has a really cool thing called GitHub Actions, which basically allows you to do, again, CI/CD, configuration management, and stuff like that in the background every time you push like a new basically new code to GitHub. It'll rebuild your application and then redeploy it. So that's pretty cool. That I want to make a video on that specifically, like just for GitHub for cloud, because we use it a little bit. We use it the same as like developers use it, but there's some more things here and there that kind of get used in the cloud. So I do want to do a video on GitHub as well. So another tool so again, not everybody uses Splunk, right? So this tool is called Splunk, and essentially it's a monitoring and alerting tool. It basically sends you like metrics from like virtual machines, your application, and stuff like that. So when stuff's not working correctly, it sends logs, basically notifies the cloud engineer or the DevOps team or developers if something's wrong with their application or their environment or something like that. So Splunk is like a tool that I've seen used. There's a lot of other ones. You got Prometheus, you got Grafana, you got stuff like that. Splunk is probably like the I guess most buzzwordy one, if you will. It's the one most people want to see most of the time. Um, so again, just a monitoring tool, just something to give you observability into your infrastructure and your application, and you can set up alerts to notify your SREs or your site reliability engineers, your old sysadmins. Hey, something's broken at 2 o'clock in the morning. Please go fix it. Um, all you on-call guys are going to know what that means. But the final one I have for you today, because my dog is going nuts outside, and I'm pretty sure she wants to go outside, is Slack. So Slack is basically Slack is like a messenger. You know what I mean? So it's like a workplace can have like a Slack workspace, I think it's called, where you can communicate with each other. Post stuff. It's kind of like for you old guys in here, AOL Instant Messenger, or it's kind of like a forum. Like I don't know how to explain it. It's kind of like Discord. It's like a professional Discord, basically. That's the best explanation I have for it. But like Discord, Slack can also do a bunch of cool things when it comes to cloud. So it can notify you if changes are made in GitHub with like a GitHub plugin, right? So if like someone pushes or opens a pull request in GitHub, it'll send a notification to a channel in Slack and be like, hey, somebody changed code and is requesting a pull request review or whatever the case may be. It also can be used for alerting too. So it can integrate with a bunch of other tools that are commonly used. So if something goes wrong for, your environment, it'll hit you up on a Slack message. So you can either like do a direct message or go to a channel that, always has alerts on. That way it just increases observability into the entire project and infrastructure as a whole. So everybody knows what's happening. Ideally, if you read your Slack messages, and it doesn't get lost in the, plethora of channels you have on Slack, probably. But when used correctly, it actually is a really good tool, and really allows people to understand the changes that are being made in the environment, as they're happening. That way, nobody can be like, oh, well, nobody told me this change. And like, well, it's kind of in that Slack channel, which is what it was designed for. But yeah, so that's all I've got for top 10 tools. I know it's a shorter video today. I may pump out a video, 2 videos next week for sure. I know we're going to do the roundtable again. I'm thinking that's probably going to be on Monday. We don't know yet. It just really depends on everyone's schedule, but I think we settled on Mondays. I might pump out another one, maybe a pre-record just for like a general tool overview. I'll put all these tools in the description so you can Google them and kind of figure out what they are. If you have any questions about what they are, hit me up on Instagram, which I'll also put in the description. Hit me up on Telegram if you know where I'm at there, which honestly I don't know. I might release a Telegram channel for this here in the near future. But if you got my username on Telegram, my thing's open, so you can just DM me. Or put them in the comment section and I can answer you directly there. Or show up to a live stream and I can also answer the question there. But for the time being, that's all I got for you guys today. Again, thanks for watching. I'll be back same time next week with a different video. I think a little bit more on the technical side this time. You guys have a great night. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you next week. Bye.